Hey, this is Zaklog the Great. So, some Christians today are very upset about racism and insist that race isn't really a thing, that making distinctions on the basis of race is arbitrary and unfair. Race is nothing more than skin color, and underneath our skin, we're really all the same. And to this I can only say, if God had wanted an undifferentiated mass of humanity, that's what he would have created. But he didn't. He created us as people gathered into families and tribes and nations and races with loyalties and duties all up and down the chain. For that matter, he did not make us all the same. Every family has their own quirks and preferences, characteristic skills and failings. One family is very musical, another might be very athletic. And the same applies up the scale to nations and races. Germans are famously well organized. They are also famously humorless. Kenyans are famously good runners. Australians are generally considered easygoing and descended from criminals. And you can scale the same thing up to races with different predilections and capabilities for each. God did not create us as a uniform, blended whole of humanity. He made us in distinct groups. Now, the Bible records that we once tried to unify, to create one nation of all peoples. That is the story of the Tower of Babel. And God said, "No, you don't," and put an end to it, dividing us into groups that could not understand one another. They said, "One race, the human race," and God very clearly said, "No." And the idea that we are obligated to love all mankind the same is grossly in contradiction to clear commands of the Bible. As I said in my previous video, Jesus commanded us to love our neighbor. He did not tell us to love every single person on earth. But it goes further than that. In the 10 Commandments themselves, we are told to honor our fathers and mothers. If this is to mean anything, we are to honor them more than we honor others. And if we are to honor our fathers and mothers, it is reasonable to extrapolate that we honor their fathers and mothers as well, and theirs, further back the chain. And at that point, whom are we talking about? Our ancestors. Our race. And in the other direction, parents are commanded to provide for their children and grandchildren. And Paul says in 1 Timothy 5 that anyone who fails to provide for his own family is worse than an unbeliever. Again, we have obligations to our family that we do not have to all men. Ignoring this, rejecting this, is worse than rejecting the Christian faith itself. And again, race is functionally very extended family. I am not saying this frees us to act maliciously towards other races, to harm them for no reason, to ruthlessly exploit them. But it does mean we not only may, but ought to love our own race more and act to protect ourselves. And this is not just theory. This plays out in the stories of Scripture as well. Twice, the Gospels record Jesus crying. Once at the death of his friend Lazarus, and once when he contemplates the fate that would befall Jerusalem, the city of his people. He cried twice, once for a friend and once for his people. The Bible does not tell us Jesus cried for humanity, for all of mankind. It tells us he cried for his people. In Romans, Paul also mourns for his fellow Jews who rejected Jesus. Jesus, St. Paul, they cared about their people, their nation, their race, more than about some vague, undefined humanity. And this is right and natural. To say that it is wrong to love your own nation, blood, not paperwork, and race more than others is to accuse Jesus of sin and to say that St. Paul wrote sin into the pages of Scripture. And despite all the ugly claims of hatred and abuse, what white people who are accused of racism are really guilty of is simply loving their own people first and wanting to protect them. God be with you.